Yeah, I mean, the possibilities really, especially at the beginning, I feel like now we're going into a little correction stage, but seem endless because it's also down to how we actually can incorporate it. Because adopting doesn't just create value, it can also open us for certain vulnerabilities. So as we rush to adopt AI, which it does create a lot of opportunities for more efficiency, for maybe deeper understanding, for greater interaction, which is all great. At the same time, are there anything specific that you think we should be thinking about in terms of possible vulnerabilities that we need to take into consideration?
Yes, I think companies will need to think a lot more about data management and privacy, and how employees are using AI. Like, let's remember that AI is very powerful. So if you use it wisely, you're going to get a lot of really good benefits. If you use it recklessly, you're going to get a lot of trouble. And it's the using it recklessly or that you don't know you're using it recklessly, that is the part that I worry about. Um, one easy example would be that earlier this year, the audit firm KPMG, they put out a big study of how employees are actually using AI. They looked at, I think it was 48,000 people in 47 countries, very big, expansive. And half of employees admitted, I'm using AI in ways that violate my company policy. Half of them admitted it. So figure there's some greater portion who aren't admitting it. Two-thirds of them said, I have seen people, my coworkers, using AI against company policy. And I think it was somewhere around half were saying, I use AI, but I don't check the results of it to make sure that those things make sense. I just take the results and I run with that ball. So how are employees using AI? And is that a compliance problem? Is it an IT security problem? Is it HR? Is it all three? Probably yes. How would you come up with those guardrails? I worry about that. The other thing that I think is that increasingly, you, the company, are going to be using technology vendors, and every vendor under the sun is now saying, and now we use AI. Well, good for you, vendor, but how are you using it? What model are you using? How do I, the company, know that you have tested that model, that you have good data management processes in place, so that as I'm running your technology on my systems with your alleged AI, how do I know that that AI is good and valid? And now, this is not a new problem because we've used technology vendors for many years now, and you would have to worry about their cybersecurity controls. We have a tool for that. Like, you could go and get a SOC 2 audit of a vendor and get an assessment of its cybersecurity controls. So it's not a new problem, but we don't have a solution for it because a SOC 2 report that you would use for cybersecurity assessments, like, that's not enough.
Yeah.
And, what actually would be, what would be an objective thing that you could rely on that a vendor could say, we got a SOC 4 report, a SOC 19 report, and our AI is awesome? We don't have that. So you, company, are going to need to really grill your vendors. And, what if they're using an awesome AI model now, but they switch out to a different model 4 quarters from now? Are you sure they're going to tell you? How do you test that new thing? There's going to be an awful lot of complexity as we weave AI into our whole IT infrastructure, which is complex. And then you're right back to data privacy, cybersecurity, fraud, hallucinations. We could go on and on and on. And we don't have mechanisms really to govern that well yet.
I think your answer is spot on, but also very complex in a sense that it reflects the complexity of introducing AI to a team.
Yeah.
Because it requires thinking about implications, training of people who are using it, training of the users on the ways they're using it, guardrails to make sure that it's not being used wrong in any sense, or that the benefits will outweigh the threat or the risk of knowing I'm actually using it against the policy, but how are people going to stop me? How are they going to see it? Yep. And as well, the regulatory aspect and actually knowing that who are you working with is putting your best interest as a company, or keeping it in mind when they're developing their services even further, not just now. And I think the thing you mentioned, and I feel like we're going to that direction, there is probably going to be an increase in the price of all of these services, because for now it's almost a gold rush when AI tokens and just the infrastructure that is being used is maybe intentionally a bit cheaper in order to build that reliance on AI tools. And as time goes by and these services become more expensive, do you think that will invite maybe greater scrutiny into which AI tools we are actually using and what is the ROI we are getting from them?
That is a valid point that a lot of people either don't know or they overlook, or we turn the other way because we don't have a good answer for it. But we need to remember that as of right now, as amazing as these frontier models are, such as Anthropic and Claude and ChatGPT and the others, they don't make money.
Yeah.
And they actually lose horrendous amounts of money. And there is no clear path to when will they make money. So either we are going to see a dramatic run up in price, and that's going to change your financial calculations, or we're going to see some dramatic change in business model. I wonder about that sometimes. But, we need to remember that we are doing this for ROI. And if the price of the I goes up, then the number R is going to fall. So, for example, do any companies out there using AI have some sort of threshold above which they would say, this is now too expensive, this is requiring too much of my time in other ways, I want to go back to using people? I can tell you right now, from every executive I've ever asked, the answer is no. They do not have that number. And a lot of them, when I point out that, OpenAI apparently loses as much as $10 billion a year right now, that's news to them. Are we sure that the economics of this make sense for us? And while they might make sense today, we don't know that it will make sense over the long term. We could get into discussions about whether we are in an AI bubble, a lot like .com implosion. I understand that after the .com implosion, the internet did not go away, and we have e-commerce today, but it took us 15 years to get there. So how would you anticipate these sort of potential strategic risks? And what are you going to brief to your board about it, or to your CISO or technology officer as you talk about embracing AI? Those are all questions we have to think of, and we're not thinking about them enough.
Yeah. And one of the things that you also mentioned is really taking time to test, to pilot services before you fully commit to it. And I think it connects to knowing that number, like getting to that number during testing to see whether that investment is worth what you're going to put into it. So is there any framework or any guidance or advice you would give to people how to approach that piloting or testing within an organization before you to commit to year-long contracts with a vendor?
Well, I would encourage everybody to really think about what I'll call the second order effects of introducing AI. So here's an example of what I mean, is that I know a large IT services firm that they built their own policy chatbot, and it's really cool and it's really good. And they rolled it out to their 22,000 employees around the world. And they found that their employees then started talking to the chatbot much more often about corporate policies. Now, at first glance, you think that's great. Then come the second order effects. They noticed that for the chatbot to give good answers on policies, they had to make their policies much longer, which is not what you're supposed to do with humans. With humans, we're supposed to have them small and simple and focused on big key concepts. AI doesn't do well with that. So they had to change up their approach to developing policies. They had to update their policies more often. So they did not necessarily streamline their workflow as much as they rearranged it to, I guess you'd call it the back end, so that the AI could be more engaging on the front end. Second thing that they noticed, and this is where I don't know that they've got a good answer, and it's questioned on my mind. So employees are using the AI much more often. They're asking it questions about policy. Can I do this? What's the policy on that? And the number of questions soared. Why? And my concern is that employees now will turn their brains off and say, the AI told me this.
Yeah.
And they basically getting an answer from the AI to cover their rear end.
Like, here is the screenshot.
Yes, this is what the AI told me to do. You can't fire me. I can't get in trouble. The AI told me to do it. Like, you can't yell at me for guessing the square root of 2. I entered it into the calculator. This is the number they gave me. You can't say I gave the wrong answer to the square root of 2 because the calculator told me. That would make sense to everyone. But if you say, you can't get me in trouble for what I did because this is the policy, here's the printout from the AI, I don't know that that's going to work. If the AI gives a wrong answer and you run with that and you create a horrendous problem, that's going to have to be fixed. So who do you hold accountable there? Because are they trying to use the AI as a shield? You can't hold me accountable. The AI told me to do this. I worry about ethical autopilot a lot. That kind of wanders away from your original question of how do we assess the true costs of this? But I'm just giving examples that the true costs might evolve over time, and they're going to require a lot of thought about if we do this here, then this happens, but what happens after that? What's the cost of that other thing? You have to weave all of that into your total cost of ownership of AI. The costs might emerge in places you don't expect.
That's one of the things, because we had a example where we created a chatbot for a client, and one of the things that we saw is also, as you said, having to really explain the policy in order for the chatbot to understand it, and then having to educate the people on what those answers meant, and then provide a resource when they can read the source of the policy for every answer, which would then give it a little bit more credibility because this is where it drew from the exact policy. But it does mean that the process of building something like that is not an instant solution. It requires work, as you said, from the team who is working with the department or IT team or whoever is doing it to make sure that the end product is of the satisfactory quality, but it's also being assessed and monitored over time. Because as we know, with models, you have to be vigilant at this point, at least, that the quality sustains over time.
I mean, that is another good point, that when you test, a spreadsheet software, spreadsheet either works or it doesn't. And when it works on day one, it's going to work every other day. But, the spreadsheet's never going to give you a different answer for a square root of 2. But AI could give you different answers over time as things evolve and as it learns. So the monitoring of the tool and the process is going to become more important because it's going to change how it behaves. That's not like any other software we've had before. And are compliance officers aware of that? Do we really appreciate what that means? If it's interacting with other humans and it's changing how it acts, then the interactions and how humans deal with it is going to change too. So you could find that the software is worth it this year, but 2 years from now it's not. Or maybe it's not worth it right now, but 2 years from now it will be. Do you buy it now and then it learns, or do you wait? These are the ROI and investment calculations get much more complex.
Yeah. And one of the things that I kind of hear from you is the idea of compliance officer understanding AI tools, almost getting into data science basic. I think the concept of AI literacy is now being talked about and is changing. So what does an AI literal compliance officer look like in practice?
So in practice, nobody knows, or in practice, they look like people, it could look in any number of ways. So in theory, I suppose you could get some sort of certification in AI training, and that would not hurt you, I don't think. But I've heard anything from you should learn how to do simple coding in Python to be able to ask really good prompts to solve a problem. I don't know if I believe that you need to pick up some coding skills. I heard that before with the rise of the internet, and compliance officers do just fine without having to know how to code in Java. Um, I think it's more about how can you analyze a business process and where those bottlenecks are and why they exist. And therefore, if we introduce AI, would it unclog that bottleneck? But then, the flows are flowing now. Is there going to be a bottleneck somewhere else? It's more like if you are a good business process analyst and you can understand the potential for how to unclog something and make it more efficient, can AI help you with that or not? Exactly how AI works to get that done. Look, the engineers don't know how AI thinks. I don't think compliance officers need to understand it either, but they need to understand what the regulations are for using AI, what your regulations are for getting stuff done, whether you use AI or not, and the business processes you have in your actual organization with actual people and how you can unclog those bottlenecks. Now, will an AI certification help you with that? Probably some of it. But if you're really good at analyzing business processes, do you need to have an AI certification? Probably not. So that's a long-winded way of saying we are still in the such early stages of this. We don't know what an AI literate compliance officer looks like.
I agree. I think at this point, we just need to maybe open communication a little bit more and collaborate with people, with the IT department, with the legal department, with the HR department, everyone who is really involved in the process. But that comes back to what you said, understand the business process, what are the checkpoints, what are the potential bottlenecks, and really work with people necessary to kind of solve that as it goes.
Yeah. I mean, to that extent, then, what is an AI literate compliance officer? Somebody who's really good at talking with internal audit, the IT team, and the leaders of those first and second line functions. That's AI literate. But then, you were also tech literate before we had AI. The AI is just, the latest version of the technology to get things done. But we've had technology helping us do things before. If you were good at using it before, you're probably still good at using AI now.
And then to kind of conclude, for compliance leaders who are feeling a little bit overwhelmed by AI, and I feel like there is a lot of us out there, but they know they can't ignore it, what's the realistic first step? If you're just starting and just looking into it and there are so many possibilities, how do you choose thoughtfully? How do you avoid creating more complexity than what you solve?
Oh, I think that, it still would be perfectly fine to be in the play with it and see what it can do phase. You could certainly try using it to develop some policies, but not others. And, have a test about when is it actually most effective at coming up with new policies. Do you, the senior person, need to use AI, or should just the junior people use AI because they are not as experienced? You could talk with the employees about how are they using AI and see what makes sense there. I think that you can certainly talk with a lot of vendors. You can see the product demos. Bring your internal auditor or chief risk management person along so you can see it. And then when the vendor is off, you can talk about all the other questions you still have. But we are going to be in a learning phase for a long time. I think that's okay. I think maybe tell senior management this is going to take a while, because the alternative is you rush ahead with AI, you don't know what you're doing, you make horrendous mistakes, it's super expensive, and everybody looks like an idiot in 2 or 3 years as you're cleaning it up. We could do that, or we could take a few more quarters to experiment and do little sandbox pilot programs and build up from there. If you have a good senior management, they're going to see that slow, steady approach is better. This is not a toy to be trifled with. And if not, then, you've got a big signal from your senior management about they are not quite sure what to do with AI either. It's okay to take it slow.
That's very interesting. I think you were totally right. There were a lot of reports by the Big Four about the failure of certain AI pilots because they were quick, because they expected too much, and because they weren't strategically supported or had a strategic goal that matched the strategic goal of the company in place. So
Yes.
everything, as you said, is a great reflection on that. So thank you so much. I feel like this was such a clear but very grounded breakdown on what AI can really do for our industry. Not the hype, not the fear, but practical step, realistic step about opportunities that are there. So for everyone listening, thank you so much for joining. We absolutely enjoyed having you, Matt, here. I hope the rest of you join on our the next webinar as well. And of course, if you would like to check out how ZUNO uses AI or talk to us if we can help in any way, happy to do so. Thank you for being here and stay tuned for more sessions.
Thank you.
Have a great day.